Yes, well, thank you very much. I was actually very impressed with Dirk's presentation, and he's almost convinced me he's right. This concept is not worth considering. Actually, I was reading his paper last night, and I read it a couple of times, and I realised actually it's very good motivation for our current paper. So we're going to be talking to you a little bit more, Dirk. What Dirk's saying is, of course, right. There are quite a few problems with this concept, but where our paper is a little different is that we're trying to look at it more from an empirical perspective and bring some element of tangibility to the concept. It's a very nebulous, amorphous concept, and you read Porter and Kramer's article, well, you can't help feel this is another great paper for them to generate another 10 years of consulting money and all the rest. So I actually do understand the cynicism behind it all. But I guess you also brought out some of the great strengths of it too, Dirk, and that's what I liked about your paper and about your presentation today. This paper, interesting, was developed with Chris Wright, who's in organisational studies, I'm in accounting, and Melinda over there, who's with Net Balance Foundation. So we kind of worked together from sort of quite different backgrounds, and I think that was a great way to go, because the way we built the proxy for CSV, the way we constructed it and analysed it, it was coming from quite different sources. So I think it was a rather novel way to go about the projects. We have to test this with our journal editors when we try to get this published, but I think it actually added a lot of value having a consulting business work with us. So actually, Dirk said a lot of this already. What is creating share value? How to fix capitalism and unleash a new wave of growth and consulting money for Porter. I was quite impressed with the article overall. It does seem to bring up some new concepts and new ways. I mean, I would probably agree with Friedman too, that you haven't figured out how to make money out of social welfare or social business or social relations. There's something wrong with it. Okay, so I think that side of it is probably pretty old, and I think it has been in the literature since the 1970s. Just going through what Porter and Kramer's original concept is, you look at the bolder part, shut up and fight, good. Share value is not social responsibility, philanthropy, or even sustainability, but a new way to achieve economic success. So it's really the marrying of business priorities, business objectives with social goals and social outcomes. And this is what's really quite interesting. But what attracted us to the study is, well, implied in the Porter and Kramer's notion of shared value, creating shared value, is that businesses should actually benefit financially by doing this. They should actually be economically benefit. If we find firms doing very well in CSV and are rated quite highly by us, we would kind of expect there to be some kind of economic and perhaps also market benefit as well. So this is really what we're looking at in this paper. So it's quite a different perspective from Dirk. Dirk's coming from a very interesting conceptual perspective. We're coming more from an empirical perspective. And just to recap, Dirk, I know you've already covered this. What is it actually? It's Porter and Kramer broke it down to three concepts: reconceiving products and markets, that's identifying societal needs, benefits, and harms that can, through innovation, developing new or reassessing existing products and markets, redefining productivity in the value chain, and enabling local cluster development. You were right, actually, I think, Dirk, in some of your comments about this, how this actually does dovetail into other literatures, and I think actually operationalising is quite difficult. And when we developed our proxy, we had to think very, very hard about what proxy measures were going to go in to capture these dimensionalities of CSV. That's why you've got to read the paper and help us with it. Okay, so what are we trying to do in this paper? As I said just earlier, we believe that actually if you're engaged in CSV, you should actually enjoy better financial performance. This is a link. For those of you aware of the CSR literature, there's been a myriad of different studies trying to look at the statistical association between finance performance and sustainability, and there's been millions of studies. Many of these studies actually are not very well done from a statistical or econometric point of view. They're using single cross-sections of data. They use very simple correlation metrics or a simple regression, and it doesn't really tell you that much. And we try to improve on all of this in this study. We're using 5 years of panel data collected from a customised database provided by CARE. We try to actually rectify quite a number of the methodological problems so that we can get a bit more confidence about the relationship between financial performance and CSV. So what we're trying to do here, the objectives of our study, my light will come on, is examine the association between CSV and financial performance and market returns, The hard part here is number 2, develop a proxy measure of CSV based on sustainability attributes extracted from the CARE database. CARE is the centre of, is that right? The Centre of Ethical Research, what's the A? Australian, Centre of Australian Ethical Research. But they actually feed off the IRIS database, which you may have heard of in London. They actually, I think they're almost like subcontractors here and sell it here in Australia. And finally, determine, the most importantly, I think number 3, is determine the causal direction of the association. Does higher CSV lead to better financial performance, or is it vice versa? I mean, if you look at some of the literature, it seems that companies are doing financially very well and are very well managed and are doing well on the stock market, seem to have a bit of discretion, a bit of, a bit of strategic discretion, if you like, to actually engage in sustainability and CSV. We just finished a book recently that was very much down those lines, that well-off banks and some leading top Australian blue-chip companies have been getting into sustainability. And I think that touches on your point, Dirk, about the little games and the little plays and the little disclosures they like to have, but you do wonder how much of it really is some kind of greenwashing and how serious it is. This book just came out. It had a green tie. I'm wearing a black one today, but the cover of the book had a green tie and a corporate guy adjusting his tie. And the symbolism there was trying to meet social expectations, projecting the right image. But within the organisation, we found the measurement of sustainability actually was really quite poor. It wasn't integrated into decision making, wasn't used in the systems of the companies. And so it was pretty much persona non grata really in the organisation itself. So it's just something that was really projected on the outside. And that's why we call it the reality and the rhetoric. There was far more rhetoric than reality in sustainability reporting. And that book's just been published by the Sydney University Press a few months ago. So that's the focus. So what is our sample? So this is a very different kind of talk from Dirk's. The sample was actually the 287 of Australia's largest companies, and we sampled over a 5-year period, 2008 to 2012 inclusive. We took a large number of financial and market variables which are extracted from the Thomson Reuters database, which is a leading global provider of corporate financial data. The real issue here was how to construct a CSV proxy. Now, we explain this a lot in the paper. If anyone wants a copy of the paper, we'd be very happy to email it to you if you're interested. But basically, we took CARE's database, which is linked to the Ethical Investment Research Services IRIS, which is based in London. And the data consists of over 150 qualitative sustainability performance measures for the ASX 300, the top ASX 300 companies, for our sample period. And CARE's database covers issues of environment, governance, human rights, employees, customers and suppliers and products. And this is where we used Melinda and her colleagues. They reviewed those 150 sustainability metrics, and it got it down to 26 metrics that they felt most married up with the Porter and Kramer concept. Okay, so they were a little bit unbalanced. I mean, I think for enabling local clusters, maybe we only have about 6 or 7 indicators, and for other indicators there are more. But basically we aggregated it up into an index, and then we used that index to run in our regression models on financial and market variables. That's essentially what the approach was. So how did CARE's methodology works? You have to read a little bit into their methodology. They rate each of the 150 variables against a score of -3 to +3. +3 is positive, most positive, sorry, -3 is most negatives. The ratings is based on CARE's assessment of publicly available data, and they claim to use international databases, and each company is actually invited to comment on its own ratings. I don't know how many companies actually do comment on their own rating and how many get a ratings change. I don't know. We haven't looked that closely at it. But their approach seems a little bit more rigorous than what you see in typical academic studies, where a typical academic will hire a research assistant and trawl through many, many companies and develop an index and then get an overall score. Here we've used a company that specialises in this kinds of ratings. They seem reasonably rigorous in what they do. They use interviews, they use surveys, and they seem to have a fairly robust process. So we thought by not doing this ourselves, but having a company actually doing it and having a consulting company to do the final compilation for us, the final subset of data variables, we can come up with a reasonably good first proxy, if you like, of CSV. There hasn't been any other proxies that we know of have been developed. This is really the first one, and this is really where the contribution of the study is in this proxy measure. So as I say, the second test here was to select from the 150 measures all the CSV type measures, and this is where net balance really was of great assistance. CARE was too. I think CARE also got involved and looked over our final selection, and they seemed to think that was a reasonable selection as well. So as I said, the scoring system is, we developed an index. So we had basically, going from -3 to +3, the theoretical range of the index is from a maximum of 78 to a minimum of -78, so it's 26 measures, oops, sorry. That's 26 measures times 3 and 26 times -3. That's the range of the index. And that's basically, if you know about statistical modelling, that's a dependent variable in the model. And here you can see a little bit more detail on the CARES grade, which is +3, medium and positive is +2, low positive is +1, low negative is -1, and so on and so forth. Again, if you want more detail about all of this, please, I'll send you the paper. And again, we used a large number of financial and market variables taken from the Reuters database. So what we did, we basically had that index, we then got all the financial market variables and put all that data together. And you have here cash flow measures, cash flow, performance measures, profitability, liquidity, capital structure, activity variables, and many others. We also used a range of control variables, such as firm size and industry effects. Obviously in Australia, you've got the mining sector, the materials and energy sectors, which tend to disclose, have a lot more information because of regulation. We had another control variable called the earnings management proxy. This tends to detect whether companies are actually managing their earnings. So we find that actually higher rates of return are positively correlated with CSV activity. We want to control for that and make sure the company isn't actually just managing short-term accruals to boost profitability. So it's very important to have that in the model itself. And so basically this is the overall result. So it's a little bit hard to see, but this is the overall regression model, which shows you the performance of all the variables. And as you can see, we've got a number of very, very strong results. Maybe you can all hear me. These are the variables here: cash flow return, step to cash flow, free cash flow per share, leverage, a lot of CapEx. We put CapEx in because companies are spending a lot on their capital expenditure tend to be concerned about their growth, future growth, and it's a widely used measure in the literature. You have here the earnings management proxy, retained earnings to total assets, that shows you how much accumulated profitability the firm has, and it's also a proxy for the age of the firm. Rate of return on assets, an important measure. Sales turnover, sales to total assets. Log of intangibles, market cap, and raw stock returns. If you look at, I don't know amongst you who are statisticians who understand regression models, but if you look at particularly at the standard p-value here, you'll see that just about all of them are statistically significant. Over 1.96 means the model is significant. We have an adjusted R-square of 54%, which shows that the overall model is fitting the data very well. We also ran various robustness, had robust t-values here, which didn't change very much from the standard t-values. They're also very highly significant. Importantly too, that the signs of the parameters, look at whether minus or plus, they seem very logical. If you focus just on the return on assets, here, it's got a t-value of 3.95, sorry, here, from standard 3.603, which is positive, which indicates that higher rate of return on assets is positively correlated with our CSV index. And if you go through many of these measures, it kind of makes sense. Even market cap has a positive parameter estimate here. Basically, higher market cap, the higher the rating on CSV activity. Okay. With leverage, it's got a negative parameter estimate, which means that lower leverage is associated with higher CSV activity. Remember that our index is the CSV proxy that we've developed from all of those measures. So when you go through, a lot of these, also notice too that the earnings management proxy as a control does not have any effect on the return on assets. It's basically more profitable companies tend to have higher CSV activity, and better cash flow companies, we notice the same result, but t-values are slightly bigger. On the right-hand side of the table, we have a lot of our diagnostics. The diff is the variance inflation factor, and you look to see whether they're okay, because if they get too high, we could have linearity problems with our model, which can undermine basically the reliability of the model and the interpretations we make. So all those figures are put there so you can see that the model is reasonably robust, and we run the robust statistics because we're running panel data. We correct the standard errors with heteroscedasticity and autocorrelation, and we still get quite significant results that are very consistent with the standard model. And the reason why we do all of that is to suggest that we do have a good model. Behaviourally, it does seem to be picking up something important in the underlying data. And that's why we do all of these diagnostics on it. The paper shows a lot more diagnostics. This is roughly it. So what we're getting from this is basically, yep, it seems to be fitting the data very well. A lot of financial, and also the market returns there, right down the bottom here. You notice there's a negative parameter which indicates that higher CSV companies with higher CSV activity have lower market returns. Okay, so the market doesn't necessarily reward these companies. This is a crude indicator. You're only getting a very rough measure here of market returns. We could introduce various refinements. But we have actually found this in many, many other studies, that this parameter tends to be negative, even in any kind of CSR context. That if you're a great CSR disclosing firm, or CSV disclosing firm, or involved in activity, the market's not necessarily going to reward you. Okay? It's just one of these interesting results that we keep getting in all our studies. Okay? So we also looked at relative influence. For those of you who are not quantitatively minded, you might want to take a quick power nap and go to sleep. And it's okay with me. I'll wake up shortly though. Okay. But all this is showing you is which variables influence the model the most. And you can see here the log of CapEx, market cap, investment in tangibles, the earnings management proxy, free cash flows, gearing, and other variables. This is the overall effect on the R-square of the model. So the CapEx one is a very big one. So companies that modernising their equipment, investing for their futures, tend to be high CSV activity type companies. CapEx is also a proxy for financial distress. You know when a company is getting into trouble when it starts cutting its CapEx. Because it's not planning for its future, it's not investing in its future growth. And we often use CapEx as a proxy for financial distress. So what this seems to be showing that the high CSV companies are strong financial companies, they seem to be very well managed companies, they have very good cash flow, they have very good accumulated profitability, they have very good rates of return, they have very good sales turnover, so they're pretty solid, good companies. The real issue we were tackling in the paper, I think I've got too much longer. 2 minutes! Okay. You should have told me earlier. All right, we'll be very, very quick from here. We're really looking at the causal relationship. Which way does the direction go? Is it CSV activity leading to better financial performance, a la Porter and Kramer? That's what they're really implying. It should actually benefit you financially. Or is it really that if you're a large company, well managed, with strong financial performance, you are getting more involved in CSV activity. Okay, so it's really a bit of a chicken and the egg argument. And for that we use the Granger test of causality, a very well established test for looking at causality. I won't go into all the technical issues with the Granger test, but basically using one series of data predicts well another series of data. So bivariate test and vice versa. So does CSV predict, say, rate of return, or does rate of return better predict CSV over the 5-year period? And overwhelmingly, we found that actually it wasn't CSV that was doing the predicting. If you're a strong financial performing company, a larger company, then that predicts your future CSV. If you look at all these tests here, the Granger test here, all corroborate this point. So results suggest that CSV scores do not appear to lead to higher market capitalisation, but rather higher levels of market capitalisation leads to more CSV activity. But we found this just about for all the measures. The relationship seems to be going only in one direction. Okay, so that led us to led us to a couple of conclusions about the overall results. Here are some of the conclusions, but I think if I only got a minute left, I might just go down to the one that. So what we're saying is our study provides a first attempt to quantitatively test the CSV claim that business that focus on social and environmental issues will achieve improved financial performance. Our findings do find a strong relationship between CSV type activities and superior commercial performance. That, I think, is indisputable. We ran many, many robustness tests on that. However, our causality analysis indicates it may just be a case of large, well-managed companies with deeper pockets engaging in greater CSV activity because they have the greater financial discretion to do so, rather than CSV itself leading to superior financial performance. So our final line here, we need actually further work to demonstrate that CSV goes beyond the adoption of a fashionable concept by already very successful companies. Okay, so really we really do see the need for more research here. So we've got some interesting results, but I think the causality tests don't provide a lot of evidence that CSV is the real driver here. And this also tends to be consistent with some previous literature, which has shown that basically if you're a well-heeled company, a large company, you've got a bit of discretionary cash flow, you will do, you'll get involved in CSR in some way because you have the discretion to do so. Companies with less discretion don't get so heavily involved. That's what the model seems to be showing.
Great. Thank you, Stuart.